Ready, set, boom. Boom, shalakalak, boom. This is Travis with Oscar Mike Radio on a Friday night, doing this over Boomcaster through Parade Deck. I want to thank Andrew and Travis for the support from Parade Deck for this platform. I'm very excited to be here, just making sure that I've got myself live. I think I am. And here we go. One second just to do a little housekeeping. All right. Friday night. I don't know about where my guest is, but here it's raining, it's cold, even though it's May. But it's going to be a great night because I'm with one of the most awesome women I've not met you, but met you. She's been a guest on my show. She's a Marine mom times two. I mean, how much more awesome does that get? I want to welcome back Carolee to Oscar Mike Radio for a Military Mother's Day edition. It's year 9, but we're doing all these firsts this year. Carolee, welcome, and thank you for giving me some time on Friday night before Mother's Day weekend.
Thank you so much for asking me to be here. I'm always delighted to see you, that
Really?
happy-go-lucky person on the other side of the screen.
Oh, well, it's just it's right back at you. You know, we met through David Willis' Tip of the Spear, and we've talked about this aspect where what's the military mom experience like. I learned the hard way. There's certain things when you're out in the middle of the desert you shouldn't tell mom, like
Yes.
hey, yeah, it's 120 degrees, but we're sleeping just fine, yay. And hey mom, I found no snakes or scorpions in my boots today. She was rattled for weeks about that. That did not put her in a good place. Like, what is the Marine Corps doing to her baby boy? Why can't
Right.
they? Really? But there's a serious side of it too, and you have lived this. So for my guest out there, kind of go over what your experience has been like being a military mom, and then we'll get to some other topics because again, this is Mother's Day weekend. It's supposed to be spring, but it doesn't feel like spring here. But I think this is going to be a regular thing, Carolee, where we have like a Mother's Day weekend kickoff here. And I just want to thank you for coming on.
I'm happy to be here, as I said. And for the record, it's been overcast most of the day. We had rain yesterday, so you're probably getting the remnants of what we had. So
love it.
So as far as being a military mom, I tell you, I was for it 100%. I absolutely feel proud of my boys for wanting to do it. And in addition, we have unofficially adopted one of my youngest son's friends from high school. They've known each other since high school, since freshman year. And he this year joined the Army. And so he calls me second mom. So, that makes 3 if you count him. But I don't know. It's so intriguing because it's all these emotions tied up in your head, right? Your heart hurts because you can't see them when they're in, or hear from them when they're in boot camp. You might get lucky. I was fortunate that I might have gotten 5 letters from him in 3 months. I know. Ooh. Yeah, 5. So I felt lucky. I mean, I wrote him at least once a week, but still, it was what it was. I sent him a little motivational thing that he got. I think it was like, I don't know. I think it was daily. And then they would put it like in an envelope for like a full week. And he was like, Mom, just please stop sending those. It was like, well, it's already paid for, so you got to suck it up. But then, it just, there's a lot of emotion, right? And in the years, like for my oldest Marine, I mean, he was adopted. We adopted him at a late age. He was already an adult. So, and he had already at that point been deployed with the National Guard twice to Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom. And he came to visit. He was with a friend and that friend happened to be living with us in our basement. And, the friend went to bed and left him with us. And so we stayed up talking till 6 o'clock in the morning. And we just hit it off. And from there, he stayed with us for a couple of weeks, and he had already decided at that point he was going to transfer over into the Marine Corps. He wanted to go active duty, and the Army had no positions available for it, according to them. So he was like, fine, if you don't have that, I'll just go right next door. And the Army recruiter didn't believe him, but literally watched him walk in. It was pretty impressive. So yeah, and and he had some struggles, right? I mean, of course he had to go through boot camp all over again. So if you go from the Marine Corps into any other branch, you don't have to repeat basic training or boot camp. But the other way around, oh yes, you do. So
We had a couple of those. We had a couple of Army guys and one Air Force guy, and the poor Air Force guy was given an extra helping of attention, if you get my meaning.
I do.
But still, for you, we kind of talked about this, but I'm really glad we can unpack it more right here.
Mm-hmm.
There's this thing where that child that's a young man now, was a part of you, and you were a part of that from the beginning. Not to overstate it, but that's the reality, right? And you have to watch your child make a man-sized decision at 17, 18, 19 years old, sometimes a little older, but that's the average age of when I was in was about 19 and a half.
Yeah.
What
And
did he?
for my middle Marine, he was 18. He was 18 when he went in, and he had actually started the delayed entry program a year earlier.
And the thing is, I mean, we can't even buy a beer yet. In some states, you can't own a
Firearm.
rifle, a firearm, or if it is, it's heavily regulated, even though it's a Second Amendment right. And we'll get in that later, or another time. But they can make a decision to join an entity that can, send them to their death.
Right.
And I'm not trying to exaggerate. I'm not trying to, cause drama, but that's the reality.
It is 100%. It is.
And
the thing about it, they're volunteering at this age,
yes.
Right? We talk a little bit about Vietnam veterans, and they didn't have the option. Well, they could volunteer. I mean, there were several, and I've had several that I'm aware of that have volunteered for Vietnam. However, the majority, I mean, there was the draft. They had no choice. And now these kids, I mean, young men, young women, but still kids, right? They are volunteering and to protect us and save, other countries from harm and evil and all that other stuff. And I'm in awe. I'm absolutely in awe. And when my kid said that, Mom, this is what I want to do, I stood right beside him, and I videoed his swearing in. When he went to MEPS, we literally got in the car and followed him and had dinner with him at the hotel. And because I knew it was going to be really tough, and I held it all in till I got back in the car, and that's when I broke down. And it's not because I was afraid that something was going to happen. They've been with us for 18 years.
Right.
Right? We've done everything together practically. But you also learn what I'm not going to lie. My middle son was growing up extremely dramatic. He'd get a paper cut and the world was ending. And this was like at 10, right? When he was an infant and a toddler, and I mean, pretty much up until high school, he was so petrified of needles. He gouged the bottom of his chin open. It took 6 of us to hold him down, and he was screaming the entire time.
Hey, well, Carolee, I'm a little bit older than your son, and I am still petrified of needles. And yes, it's taken some extra encouragement to get me to calm down. So
Yeah,
I feel his pain. I do.
I do too, because I'm the same way, right? I hate needles. That being said, once he started the delayed entry program, you could see he was starting, his mindset was starting to slowly mature, right? I mean, he was working out with them 2 to 3 times a week. And I mean, I still struggled with things with, I mean, he didn't like homework, so he didn't do it, but he was super, super smart, right? But the kid almost failed high school. He almost didn't graduate, but yet ends up graduating because he scored so high on his what is it, the SATs, whatever
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
He scored so high that in this state, if you score above a certain percentage, you get to graduate with honors. He graduated with honors with like a 2 point something GPA because he was so lazy. When he took his ASVAB, it was supposed to be a practice one at the Marine Corps recruiter's office. They told him, it's practice. Take your time. We'll give you 24 hours. We don't care. Just take your time, see what you see, and don't worry about the score because you can take it again. So he was done in 20 minutes. He didn't write a single thing on a piece of scratch paper, and he scored an 82. And he was like, yeah, I know I can do better. I just was kind of racing through them. And they're like, no, we're taking this. No, we're done.
Because usually it's between like 35 and 45,
Yes. And in this state, I was told by the recruiter that the average that they see is about 30.
Yep.
So it was like, and I mean, he's always been smart, right? At the age of 2, he knew every single organ and their name and their function in the body, including the little dangly thing in the back of your throat.
The epiglottis? Is that what it is?
No,
Larynx.
no.
I can't remember.
And now it just went out of my head. But yeah, he knows that too. And it was, so he's always been smart, but he's always been so bored. And then, year after year, every year that you increase in grade, the first thing they do at the beginning of the year is review what you learned last year. And he was not having it. So, I but anyway, he initially wanted to go into the Navy, and he wanted to be a Navy SEAL after watching the Chris Kyle movie, right? But then something happened. And my oldest Marine, the one that we had adopted, he was part of the 2-1 unit in Camp Pendleton. And his wife, he'd recently married that December of 2021. 2020. And in March of 2021, they found that she had stage 4 cancer. So he had the choice to stay or be redeployed with his unit. And he'd been, they were going to head back to Japan. He'd been deployed 2-3 times already by that point. And so he opted to stay. And then, so his unit went to Japan, and then in August got detoured to Afghanistan, more specifically Abbey Gate. And it was his unit, the majority of those 13, I believe it was 12 out of those 13 were from his unit.
Wow.
And that rocked me. Not only him, I mean, of course, survivor's guilt, the whole 9 yards, but he trained with them. He knew them personally. He trained with them. They were his friends. He trained some of them. And because he was kind of the old man at that stage. And my mind as a mom immediately goes to, had he gone what would have happened to him,
Right.
because those were his friends. He volunteered to go to DC, to Arlington National Cemetery, to help with the honor guard, to lay one of them to rest. Because again, as I said, he knew them. And then not only that, but when he got back to Pendleton, he was the one who went to the airport and picked up all of those other Marines that had been injured from there and took them back to base.
Did he ever talk to you about that experience and what that did to him at that time?
He did to a degree. He didn't talk necessarily about that. What he talked more about was, so he was in a relationship which I think his wife would have been fine, but they lived with his mother-in-law, and politically they didn't see eye to eye. And my son has always kept it in because, trying not to rock the boat. He has his own political views, and the mother-in-law has hers. When this happened, of course, my daughter-in-law at that time, she's going through chemo. She can't work. So he was staying home, and he'd gotten a second job. He ended up becoming a Domino's pizza delivery driver to help support. The mother-in-law is not working. She quit her job and decided nobody could afford her. So, he's helping to pay the mortgage, pay the medical stuff, of course, that, that helps through the military, but food, all the stuff, all of the utilities, the whole 9 yards. So he went and got a second job. So he wasn't always home to go to her appointments because he's trying to make sure she still has a roof over her head. So when this occurred, he went to a bar. Okay. He was broken. He was having a few drinks. The mother-in-law texts and just reams him a new one, telling him what a horrible husband he is because he's never there for his wife and she's going through all of this stuff and, so on and so forth. And he sent that to me. And then he called shortly after, like the next day or something, or maybe even 2 days after. And he said that he was doing a little better. He had gone out to the mailbox to get the mail, and on top of the mailbox was a folded flag with a note. And it was from a neighbor that said, "I don't know how to dispose of this, but I know you do. Thank you for your service." And he lost it. He just completely broke down. So he said he went into the bedroom and he laid on the bed and he was just sobbing. And at this point, the wife comes in and says, they wouldn't want you to cry about them. And, it's, the mom was blaming it on the president at the time. And, and it was just so overbearing and overwhelming for him. Hearing this tossing of blame and, and it's not helping anything, right? He needed somebody who was going to be able to just hold him and, and help him through it. And it was unfortunate, right? So, I get those, I check in on him regularly, see how he's doing. There were times I didn't hear from him, and the mom just worries, right? It's a lot of, is he okay? What's going on? What's going through his head? Trying to get him to talk. But he doesn't always. He doesn't, very rarely does this one talk about things. He wants to be the life of the party. He wants to be the happy-go-lucky guy and not have anybody have any kind of potential pity or make him feel any less of a man, right? But survivor's guilt is absolutely real in his mind. Well, I don't know that he recognized it at that time, but as a mom, I laid it out for him, told him it's okay. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to cry. It's okay to work through this. And And, so a lot of things as a mom to try and keep him from doing something that he can't take back.
You see all this happening to your son. Was there any desire? I'm sure there was, but did you have challenges trying to find help or get help for him? Because, as I understood it from my mom and other moms who, do this, there's not really an instruction manual for how to be a military mom. And it's really heightened by the fact that less than 1% of the American population has served or serves in the military now. It's not like back in World War II and World War One. It's a very, very small group of people.
Right.
So it's not like, your child is in college or part of a sports team or something like that, and all the moms can come around. A lot of times, my understanding is, your child might be the only Marine Corps active duty person from their high school, the only one.
Yes.
So, what's going through your mind as you're seeing this happen to your child? And how do you say, you know what, how do I get help for myself, for him? What's that like, Carolee?
As far as help for myself, that never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
My thought was helping him the best I could do, the best he'd allow me to help. At this point in the game, he's, let's say, 30, 29, 30 years old. So, I mean, it's time has really moved. So, but it was a matter of trying to keep him in contact with me regularly and keeping me updated and trying to get him to talk, or at a minimum to laugh, have conversations, funny things, let him talk to his brothers, let him talk to his dad, kind of share what we did for the week or whatever. And also let him vent, right? I mean, that was in my mind, that's important. Even if I don't understand what it is he's venting about, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that as parents, we need to recognize that we're not here to just listen. That's important. Yes. But it's to give them the opportunity to talk. And it's a matter of talking about whatever they want to talk about. At that point, it was really hard because he pretty much refused. I mean, he'd tell me, like I said, the story about the flag on the mailbox and things of that nature. And he told me that, he was crying on his bed. But after he told me that, it was like he was done talking about it. So, and I know better, right? We as moms, we know our kids. So it was up to me to make sure he heard my voice as often as possible. And if I didn't hear from him after a couple of days, after me texting or trying to call or whatever, then I'd hound him. I would send him a text message every 10 to 15 minutes because it was like, look, you're not getting away from me. That is not what this is about. We are here for you. And, whatever you are going through, we're here for you to share. So, and in the end, he made a move. He got transferred. He ended up getting orders to go to Virginia and became an instructor, security forces instructor. So unfortunately, that meant, they had the option, they talked about it, about his wife moving with him. And it just made more sense for her to stay where her doctors and everything were. And after, a couple months, unfortunately, she passed away.
Oh, wow.
And so then he had that on his table, on his plate, right? And then, so it's just one thing after another for him. And it's been really, really heartbreaking. And it's a matter of trying to get him out of the spiral. And it's not that easy. When it came to resources, the only time or the first time that I actually physically dealt with resources for him outside of just my own person was after he got out of the military. It was a month after he got out and he spiraled. And he drove 10 hours home. And at this point, he's remarried and stepkids, and drove 10 hours home. And we ended up, I told him, we're going to go to the VA, which was like 5 minutes away. And he's like, okay. And
Nice.
we're walking up to the front doors, and he's like, well, what do I say is, wrong? I said, you're there for mental health. And he says, okay. And we walk in, and I mean, he's happy-go-lucky. He's talking to the nurses. He's talking to the, just everybody. Just, yeah, I came home because, I know my mom's got resources, and and unfortunately for him, they wanted to keep him under observation for several days, and then that went downhill quick. I honestly thought he'd never talk to me again.
Oh,
And so that being said, right, he never got out of his chair, and he never threatened anybody. However, he did cuss at everybody, like scared everybody out of the room. And then he says, look, Mom, I love you, but you just need to leave. Or I don't want to talk to you. I said, I'm not talking to you. I'm sitting here quietly, and I'll stay here. And he never said anything more about it. And so, I mean, they took him. Unfortunately, he didn't fight, but, they took him to, the psych ward, but had to be escorted in a wheelchair with a guard, and the whole time, just before that, he's like, just give me my prison clothes. I mean, I'm laughing now, but at the moment it was devastating to me. I am what you would call an empath, right? So I feel what somebody's feeling. And it's heartbreaking. So anyway.
But now you told me before that you're an empath, and I forgot to ask you. I wanted to ask you tonight.
Yeah.
You're an empath, but you're also a mother.
I am.
And moms say to me sometimes, and even mine, that they can really feel what I'm feeling. I'm like, yeah, Mom's just saying that, but
I know.
That's really a thing for you. Like, you really
that really
felt
truly is a thing.
everything that he was feeling at that time, and you were powerless to help at that time, or you were taking action. I won't say you're powerless, but you were taking
that
action.
was my action. I
Yeah.
needed to take him someplace that I felt was going to be able to help him and give him the help that I could not, right? As a mom, as much as it hurt me to do and watch him, I felt at that time that's where he needed to be.
Yeah.
I mean, and to be fair, I have to say this: the nurse, the attending physician, both argued, and they told us both, they have never done this in their entire careers, argued with the psychiatrist to have him just do outpatient therapy. And it was primarily because, one, he came home to me because he knows with my channel, which is Conversations with a Vet, I have and am continuing to grow the network of veterans and resources for veterans, including my sons. So they recognize that. And I think I gave them a card, and I think they actually went and looked, truly. So both of them advocated, the nurse and the primary physician advocated for that. And it was the psychiatrist who came in well, he physically didn't come in. And I'm going to say this. You have they brought in a cart. They wheel in a cart. On the cart is an iPad. On the iPad is the psychiatrist asking questions. So it's facing my son, and I'm sitting behind it, just listening. Kind of a foreign accent. Had no idea what he looked like, anything. And he says, "Yeah, I think we want to keep you for observation." And you could just see my son's face change, and he just shuts down. And I from behind this, I said, "Well, how long are we talking?" And 3 to 4 days. My son didn't say another word. And then they, wheel him away, and they're like, "Look, we'll try and talk to him and see." And they came back, and this psychiatrist was adamant. Nope, he's staying. So they take him, he leaves, and I go to the front desk because they had said, get the schedule for visiting hours and all of that at the front desk. So I do that. And behind the front desk where they're at, there's desks facing the back wall. And there is somebody in scrubs on a computer, and right next to him is a man with a white coat and gray hair. Well, after the guy had left, after they moved the psychiatrist out, he had made a comment, my son did, that this guy had gray hair. And the one in the white doctor's coat turns and starts talking to the guy in the scrubs with the same accent that was used in the room.
Wow.
He was just right outside the door. I don't know why he decided he didn't want to come in the room, but so anyway, that was shocking. It was interesting, to say the least. But the next morning, I get the phone call, and they said, "Do you feel safe having him come home?" And I said, "Absolutely." I said, everything's locked up. I have people on their way to the house. If I can call them and they will be here for him, other veterans. And they said, okay. So, I got to pick him up several hours later the next day. And I was absolutely shocked and stunned that he actually talked to me.
What was that conversation like, Carolee?
Well, I told him, I got to meet I guess, therapist, something like that. And I guess they had talked a lot about, how to control, anger and upsetting thoughts and, tone and things like that. So he was telling him, just remember your breathing, remember this, remember that. So we get in the car, and I said, he seemed like a nice gentleman. And he goes, yeah, he was great, because nobody wanted to listen to me until he came in. And then he was the only one who actually listened to what I had to say. And I said, well, I'm glad that you found somebody that you trusted enough to talk to, and, that made you feel comfortable. I said, because not going to lie, kid, I thought you would never, ever want to talk to me again. He goes, yeah, the thought crossed my mind, but then I thought I'd feel really bad. So, I mean, and then we also had gotten, because that was the very first time. Now he had set something up in the state that he lived in once he got out, but it took a long time. The state that he lived in, that VA messed up all of his stuff. They didn't even have the right phone number for him, and so on. So the VA where I lived at the time, they fixed everything in the system. They transferred everything over temporarily to that VA. They were wonderful. So they set everything up for therapy online. And so, he was able then to go home, because at that time, the new wife, his newest wife had, pregnant and was having a lot of anxiety. So, and it was serious as far as the,
Yeah, yeah.
what was happening with the baby and the heart rate and all of that kind of stuff. So he got that set up, and then the next step was being able to find a job, and finally found one. And but then he was never home, and so it was a lot of things that he has to be able to overcome and adapt,
Sure.
right? But the thing about it is he's not in the military, so he's not being told, do this, do this, do this, do this. And as a wife, and even as a mom, we don't want to say, this is what you need to do every single day. We want you to be able to use your head, be able to know that these things need to be accomplished every day, right? You get out of bed, you get dressed or shower, you brush your teeth, you brush your hair, whatever, right? I mean, those are basic things. And then, dishes in the sink. Okay, who's going to do them? It's those basic retraining of things. And so that was not easy. And in his opinion at that time, it was difficult because in his mind, nobody understood him or what he was going through. And that even the people that he had deployed with to Afghanistan during when he was in the National Guard, they don't call him. He always has to be the one to call them.
Yeah.
It's that feeling of nobody cares. And so, it's something that he just has to work through. And that's another thing too. I mean, that I know we've talked about, Travis, on multiple occasions when we're able to see each other, is reaching out to veterans and just seeing how they're doing.
Right.
Just a hey, I was thinking about you today. How's everything going? It doesn't have to be a long conversation. Just something to let them know you're thinking of them means the world.
It's really simple. And it's so powerful because it's like, oh yeah, that dude actually thought about me and then text me. Dang.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You have lived the gamut of the military mom life, and you've seen, the results of serving if something goes awry. And
Yeah.
a lot of times it is a family issue or medical issue. Sometimes it's a result of an injury or seeing death up close. We had talked before earlier in the week about doing this, and I had asked you to watch an interview with a woman by the name of Karen Vasilian, Abington resident here in Abington, Massachusetts, who lost her son Danny, KIA in Afghanistan, and what that was like. And it's 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 very different. I'm not going to
Correct.
say that a loss of a child is different than what you went through. But
No, it is, you're absolutely right. It is completely different. Mine, it was always a what if,
yeah,
not it's happened,
well,
right?
but hold on here a second. But so horrible. You can tell that Karen feels that every day,
Yes.
the loss of her son.
Yes.
But I do have to wonder, and I'm not equating your situation with hers, but is there a part of you sometimes that ask yourself what would happen if my little boy had just stayed out of the military and gone to school or gone to a trade and not gone through all these experiences?
No.
And in a way, you kind of lost a part of him, or no?
Yes. I don't. I don't. I try everything in my power not to think about the what ifs, right? It's not easy because it makes us who we are today, right? Tragedy happens in every single person's life. It's what we do and how we handle it and get through it together. It's what makes us as humans, right? And as much as we want to turn back time it's not realistic.
Okay.
So I try not to dwell on that. And it's not easy, right? I mean, um, we always want them to stay our little, thank you, our little kids. And I do. I look at my boys, all of them, and I'm like, where has this time gone? You know, my middle Marine, he told me he's moving to New Mexico. And I said, fine, pack all your stuff, make sure you go through it all. Anything left here, I'm going to charge you storage fees. Because I know him, and he's a mess. He's a messy person. And he's like, okay, leaving at the end of this month. And he has not picked up one single thing. Actually, that's not true. The other day he said, hey, Mom, I'm going to go clean my room. And I was like, oh, yes. And he came out with a grocery sack of trash. That was it. That's all he did. But he's got like 6 totes that he has to go through, and he hasn't touched them yet. And he's leaving at the end of this month. So, yeah, interesting.
But you saw Karen's loss.
I did.
And as an empath,
Mhm.
what was that like watching her? Because the thing is, watching that conversation is try as you might, you didn't want to bring up everything that had happened chapter and verse. But I realized that she feels that loss every day,
Yes.
all the time.
Yes.
And I'm not a mother, and I never will be. So it's different for me than talking to someone who was there from the beginning with that child and watching that child take their first breath.
Right.
And I'm told that, well, the pain goes away over time, but does it really ever go away, Carolee?
It doesn't. I've seen death. Um, I've seen things we shouldn't be seeing, right? And that's just as a civilian. Okay. There's things that have happened um with family members that, things you won't be able to unsee. So, and you miss them every day. What gets easier is your ability to go day to day, right? It doesn't mean that you've forgotten them or that you don't think about them every day. It's just that you're able to get up every morning out of bed and do something, right? Even if it's just getting up and getting a shower, that's
Yeah.
the start, right? It's you think about them every single day. And that's okay, because we don't want to forget those loved ones.
No.
Why do we need to forget them? We shouldn't. And as far as veterans go, it's important to speak those names out loud who are no longer with us. And so that their voices are heard, their names are heard, and they are never forgotten, right? It's the same reason why we have all the different walls that we have that are memorials to our veterans. So they are never forgotten.
Well, that's the thing. Even though it's been years since then, it still is fresh in her mind every day.
Yes.
The desire was that her son would not be forgotten. And that's why she agreed to tell the story, so that in some form or fashion, in some way, someone maybe, tomorrow or years from now would see that and realize what, Danny did while he was alive.
Yes.
Um, and like I said on the video, it was one of the most humbling, surreal experiences as a Marine veteran myself. And I did not serve in combat. I did bury 3 Marines while I was in for different reasons. And so it really hit home that, especially around the fact that we're near Memorial Day, what the
Yeah.
true cost is, not price, but cost for what we enjoy as Americans.
we don't give credit enough to our veterans. We just don't, in my opinion. I think that there is still so much more that needs to be done for our veterans, and not just the nonprofits.
Yeah.
The nonprofits are amazing, and they help amazing people get support that they might not otherwise get. But I think more needs to be done at the governmental level, you know, your local level, the state level, and federal level, because I'm going to tell you, and this is how I feel from my whole being, that when you sign your name on that dotted line, you're signing a contract, and a contract is between two entities. And you, as veterans, have fulfilled your end of that contract, which means then it's up to the government to fulfill their end of the contract and ensure that you, as veterans, are taken care of mentally and physically, and whatever that means.
Whatever that means. So you have the mom on your shirt.
I do.
Now, does that stand for something, or just I'm a military mom?
Well, okay. So I bought this last year for Mother's Day. It's grunt style,
Okay.
and we have a grunt style in Nashville at the mall. And I just liked it. The back has some sayings that well, for one, I can't remember. Anyway, so something like, we will love and protect our kids, and so on and so forth. But if you mess up, we will beat your.
Yeah. Okay.
Something along those lines. Anyway.
Hey, David Willis Jr.'s checking in, Carolee.
What's that?
David Willis Jr.'s checking in.
Oh, hey. How's it going, Willis?
Oh, yeah, it's Willis, not David. Sorry.
That's okay. The other thing, the other thing MOM stands for, love you too. MOM also stands for Mother of Marines.
Hoorah.
Now, we talked about, you brought up having other moms, or, available, right? Not, you might have one kid who went into the Marine Corps, for example, and not another one out of that high school. So I'm here to tell you, and to tell your audience, regardless of military branch, when they ship to whatever their basic training or boot camp is, wherever that is, be sure you can go to Facebook, type in whatever branch they're in. If you already know what, platoon or any of that kind of thing is. I know the Marine Corps, when they give the parents, when you drop your kid off, they give you a Facebook page to go to specifically for the parents. And then from there, it will branch off to all of these other groups for moms. And
wow.
Yes, and I have met some wonderful moms. There's even groups out there for those who have been injured or in medical, okay, that for parents to be able to commiserate, share, find resources to help their kid who has been in medical. So do some research. We can help with that. If somebody, especially Marine Corps, which I'm more apt to have information on for those groups, if you're interested in that, you can get with Travis. Travis can get with me, and I can get him those groups, and you can feel free to join. But yeah, so there are plenty of resources for moms as well as dads, because of course, you've got single dads or whatever out there too. So got to give them that credit. But yes.
Well, how things have changed, man. Back in I'm dating myself here. It was, the payphone by the by the
Oh yeah.
PX and a line of guys waiting to make calls.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course, the Marine Corps still does not let you have a cell phone during boot camp. Now, Army, they do, and they get to talk like, I don't know, an hour on Sundays. I know. I know.
Yuck.
I mean, it's great for moms in that aspect, but I don't know. To me, it just really makes them, for the Marine Corps, it just kind of tries to sever that emotional tie with the parent. And I get it, because there are a lot of parents that are, just very helicoptery.
Well, I mean, I don't know about the Army, but in Sundays in the Marine Corps at San Diego was drill time. You know, we had the day off where we're going to be on the parade deck, getting some extra drill in. That's what Sundays are for, not for calling mom or dad.
They let them go, to churches or religious services. Several, I'm aware that several would say, yeah, I'm religious, just to get out of having to do PT for that time. And then, we didn't talk a whole lot, of course, about my youngest son, but he was stuck in medical. My youngest Marine, he was stuck in medical for nearly 2 years before he was separated.
Wow. Man, from boot camp or from active duty service?
He graduated boot camp, was home for his 10-day leave, went back, and within that week that he went back, he posted something on Snapchat, a picture of him trying to smile, and it says, I can't feel the right side of my face, and laughed. And I sent him a message this is while he's in holding at, MCT.
Yep.
And I said, call your mom. I did, because I knew exactly what it was. I said,
stroke?
No, he ended up with Bell's palsy. He had an adverse reaction to the COVID shot. So,
wow.
18 years old with Bell's palsy. And then, of course, that whole facial paralysis thing. And then that morphed in. So they didn't force him to go to the doctor, right? They said, doesn't look like you're having a stroke. Just go hang out in your rack. And it was over a 96.
Yep.
So
4 days on.
Yeah. So he had to wait to get in to the clinic. And of course they said, yep, you got Bell's palsy, which I knew. So he ends up, they finally give him an antiviral medication, which is supposed to help, but he should have had it immediately. So, 6 months of his face being paralyzed, half of his face. They also had put him, because he started getting severe pain from his ear all the way through his jaw, sharp shooting pain, which is not something that's common in Bell's palsy. So they put him on the max dosage of gabapentin. And that boy is like that big around. And his metabolism, he would go through. The reason they put him on the max is because his metabolism would burn through and so fast. So, 3,600 milligrams of gabapentin a day, and it lasted a year on that, to the point. And his reaction to the gabapentin was severe dizziness. So most of the time he just laid in his rack before. So eventually, after like a month, they realized he was not going to get any better. So then they moved him to medical. Yeah. So it's been interesting. He is now out. He's 80% disabled. And he ends up as the ending diagnosis, trigeminal neuralgia, otherwise known in the 1800s as suicide disease.
Wow, Carolee. There were problems with that, and there's a lot of questions being asked about whether or not it should have been mandated.
Well, I have documentation, Travis, that they were required to sign that says it was approved by the FDA and that it was 100% safe.
It wasn't. I mean, he's not
It
the only
wasn't
one.
even, no, he
There's
was not.
plenty of people,
Yes.
22-year-old people going on a run, dropping dead after the run.
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't know what happened. Really?
I want to know how many of those have actually been reported as that being the cause. That's my burden, right, to bear. That's something that is on my list of things to work on.
You said closing down. We're supposed to be here for like 20 minutes, and we went through an hour. And it's just like a blink of an eye. I love it. But one of the things I really liked is you said, hey, if you're a military mom or even a parent and you're trying to process this change in your life as a parent, you can reach out to Carolee and get some real world advice or connected with people that are, at your place right now. People who they might be half a nation away, but they got a person serving in the Navy along with your child. And it does wonders. It does wonders. You all can compare notes, uniform inspections.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
Share
mom,
photos.
yeah, photos. Oh man, photos. I mean, I gotta tell you, I try telling people, males and females in service, take those photos. They might get your friends might get annoyed or whatever, but I tell you, 20 years later, I'll get a call from somebody saying, "Hey, you remember we were at this place? You took a picture. Do you still have it?" I'm like, "Well, let me look." And like, yeah, here it is.
Yeah.
And the reason they asked is that Marine had passed on. They wanted a little memento of that, and you got to treasure those friendships and those times while you can. So those pictures are valuable, so valuable.
Yes.
Well, you know, there are special moms all across the world, right? But
There are.
I'm still partial to the fact that Marine Corps mothers are truly a cut above, Carolee. And not only did you do it once, you've done it twice now. How do you deal with being that awesome?
Humility.
That's not an adjective used with Marines a whole lot, Carolee.
I know. I just, I can't say that I'm awesome. They did the work. I've just been the supporter, the cheerleader.
Well, you'd be surprised that there are a lot of people in the military and the Marine Corps especially who don't get that support from parents. It's hard to believe, but it's true.
No, I agree. And that's basically how we ended up adopting, at the time he was 25, literally in a court of law and turned and went to the Marine Corps because he did not have that support.
Well, hopefully this Sunday you get taken out to your favorite place to eat, or there's just something nice to know that you're a mom. But, I've always liked the fact that you didn't serve in the military, but you are, very closely aware of the military experience on many different spectrums, many different perspectives that, you as a mother can only share with other moms. And yeah, we need cheerleaders. It might not seem like that big tough Marine needs a attaboy, but there's a lot of days you're getting your butt kicked, by life and by your NCOs, and then your officer wants to go on a 10-mile motor run on a Friday. Life's kicking your butt, and you just need mom to say, you know what, keep going.
And that we're proud of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
the biggie.
Well, Carolee, Chesty is looking down from heaven right now, and he's very happy with what's going on here. And I'm always pleased and always proud to tell you, Semper Fidelis, because I think Marine moms deserve that too. And I hope you have a very, happy and wonderful Mother's Day. Thank you so much for giving me your time.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, Travis.
Well, there you go, folks. You have the perspective from a mom, a military mom times two, who's seen many different sides of military experience, who's here to help you out. Carolee, thanks once again. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms. And Carolee, let's do this again next year.
100%. Put us on the calendar. Happy
Yes.
Mother's Day, moms.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, Rich Malaka says hello. Rich,
Hi, Rich.
We love you, but we are getting ready to shut it down. We will see you next time in Remission and Flight.